Now we're going to look at the next step, step 6 and 7 of the systematic approach. And really it's mostly step 6, but we're looking at how do we choose between alternative layouts that we've developed in using SLP or some other method. So we always want to look at cost benefits. That's definitely one of the things we'll be wanting to look at. And one of the best ways to look at it in terms of dollars, although there's a lot of things that can't be quantified with dollars, so you need to make sure that you include other things too. But when we're looking at the dollars first, we're going to look at something like what are the initial costs associated with the project. This could include new machinery, some sort of construction cost if you have to change walls, and moving costs. Any kind of implementation training would also be included here. And the benefits of a new layout, that's a little bit harder to quantify, but some of the easier ways look at the decrease in distance traveled causes more time to be freed up by the employees. So they could either make more items so you have more production, or you could actually even lower labor costs and keep the same production level. So depending on which one of those methods you use, you can justify some of the costs associated with that. There's also a variety of other ways that you can justify costs, like less air time, less errors. That if you're working on an item that is wrong or making a mistake on an item, that's wasted time. So you'll be saving time, maybe machinery and materials, and on rework. There can also be a decreased cost in training if it's more intuitive and more standardized. Then the training costs will go down. You can have higher employee satisfaction, that employees will leave less often. There's actually a huge cost associated with training new employees. So if you can avoid that by keeping the ones you have, that's also a benefit. There can be a decreased injury rate, so people aren't getting sick or hurt as much, like ergonomic benefits. That's a little bit hard to quantify, but it is something you could look at. Also lower accident rate, although that's also again hard to quantify, and lower citations and fines. OSHA, if there is ergonomic problems or unsafe conditions, they actually can fine you, so you could sort of avoid the fines, and that would be a benefit. So when you're looking at the costs, you want to make sure that you have references for all your costs. You can use simple things like looking on Craigslist to see how much something costs, but always have a reference. Don't just say, I think it's about $1,000. Actually have a place where you have gone and got those. It is quite difficult sometimes to get estimates on big pieces of machinery. Companies who sell that machinery want to deal with a real company and a real person who is actually looking to buy this. One of the advantages we have is we are working with companies who might implement these things. And so sometimes we can use the company's name and tell the vendors of the machinery that this company is seriously looking into buying this. But it is a little bit difficult sometimes to get fully priced large machinery costs. You can use rules of thumb. For instance, rent for a finished office building in San Luis Obispo is about $1 per square foot per month. For a warehouse or an unfinished area, it's about 65 cents per square foot per month. So these costs, you can use that as an initial cost of a new layout, but you can also use it for a savings. If you're freeing up some square footage, you can use this rule of thumb to help you to figure that out. You can also scale up or scale down from other jobs that have happened. Like last year we did this and it was a smaller square footage area, but it cost $100,000. So now this is a bigger square footage, so twice as big, it might cost $200,000. You can do scaling up and scaling down. Making sure that you do a complete cost out though, complete of the move, the construction costs, the moving costs, the new equipment, it has to be completely costed out. Another thing is that whenever you put dollar values on things, especially if you're doing totals, you want to round it. You don't want to put $85,000, $231.26. If you put that kind of significant figures in there, it really communicates an exactness that you didn't have. And I would almost always round things to the 500 or the 1,000 level when you're looking at costs. So looking at this idea of taking less travel time means either labor savings or quicker production means higher volumes. So looking at how to quantify this in these things like lower travel time into actual dollars, we're going to do that in class a little bit. For instance, if we look at this, what's the travel distance of an old layout is 150 feet per part, and the travel distance of the new layout is 30 feet per part. The production is 20,000 parts per year, and a person walks 3 miles per hour. What is the yearly labor savings? So I want you to try, actually, this is going to be your question for, that you're going to be handing in to me. And then in addition, if the cost of labor is $35 an hour, what is the labor saving cost? This is pretty much a unit analysis problem, trying to figure out if they're saving this much, how much time are they saving. So another way of doing this justification is looking things like engineering economy. We're going to look at this in class. I'm going to have you work through some old engineering economy problems that should seem familiar to you. But we'll look at things like, well, can we justify a $20,000 investment with this kind of return over time? And what is the rate of return on that? Most companies also like to look at payback. So if you make an investment, how soon until you get that money paid back? We'll look at that. So those techniques I just talked about are sort of quantitative techniques. But in addition, we want to include some of the qualitative things. So one of the ways we do this is a multi-attribute analysis. And I think you've seen this in other places at other times, maybe in human factors engineering, maybe in analytical hierarchy process. I think you use that in OR. I don't remember which OR, but I think you've seen this. So what this looks like is what we do is we lay out alternative in a matrix. So in this case, we have 5 alternatives listed here, and we've quantified some issues around them, the rate of return. But if the hurdle rate is all 10%, then all of these are acceptable projects, and we would want to choose one. So we want to look at other aspects like the flexibility. So in this case, we have low flexibility for the first 2 alternatives, high for the third, and medium. We also might be concerned about sustainability, maybe some sort of green aspects of the project. So this, we've just sort of qualitatively said, well, this one's really, really good, this is not so good, and these are fair. So that's how we would lay it out. And sometimes that's enough, just to lay out, these are alternatives, this is what it looks like. We can also, though, convert some of these things into this sort of color-coded thing, where red is not good, green is good, and yellow is sort of medium. And from this, we can also, this is something that's used like in consumer reports. I think they use this kind of coding system in consumer reports. I've seen happy faces, I've seen pie charts, like a certain amount of the pie filled in. But this helps us visually look at, and if we can just really, if you just look at these, you can see B is probably not that good of an alternative because it's kind of medium and low. And also E might not be that great of an alternative. So we would want to maybe throw those out and just narrow it down to A, C, and D. We can also take that one step further and do a kind of a scoring system on this and a weighting. So in this case, I think this is more like the analytical hierarchy process, where we put a weight on 50% of our decision, we really care about the rate of return of it. 30% is on flexibility and 20% on sustainability. These have to add up to 100%. And then we score this and we say alternative A is a 4, in this case, sort of medium high on the rate of return. The highest rate of return is D. If you remember back here, we had it 20%, 18%, 16%. So we go ahead and 5, 4, 3 and score it that way. And we do that for all of these aspects. And then we do a weighted average. So in this case, we're going to take 4 times 0.5 plus 1 times 0.3 plus 3 times 0.1, add 0.2, add that up, and that's a 3.1. In this case, we can see also that 3.8 is the highest alternative. So D looks like it might be the best fit for us in this aspect. And that's just one way of doing multi-attribute analysis. All of these things are put together, and you will use this to help you choose the correct alternative.